Welcome to the Well Club, where the journey to wellness begins. Take a deep breath, open your mind, and join us as we explore the endless possibilities of well-being. Here's Dr. Rob Duke.
Dr. Courtney Tracy, known as the Truth Doctor, has made a huge impact on social media with her candid approach to mental health. Amassing over 1 million followers on TikTok alone, a licensed psychotherapist and doctor of clinical psychology, she has become one of the most recognizable names in the digital mental health space. She's also the author of the book, Your Unconscious is Showing. Take control of your life with the 12 Steps of Consciousness. Courtney, welcome to the Well Club. How are you today?
I'm good. It's an honor to be here. How are you?
I'm doing great. You know what? I'd love to hear about your journey to how you decide to be in this mental health space.
That's a great place to start. I started in the mental health space. I started in the mental health space as a patient. When I was 15 years old, I actually went to an adult residential treatment center for substances, um, psychedelics, and methamphetamine. And yes, 15 years old in an adult residential center, which I then found out wasn't licensed, and obviously I wasn't supposed to
Wow.
be there. So that part's important of the story because that's where my mental health journey began. And now I own adult residential and outpatient treatment centers that are taking appropriate patients and providing really clinical care. I realized, however, my first time in treatment and then subsequently getting into an AP psychology class in high school, that there were people in the world solving the questions that I had been asking myself my whole life.
Right.
And I made a decision in that moment that I was going to eventually, and my point person in this treatment center was the van driver driving us to meetings. And I said, one day I'm going to be the person driving the van, not the person in the van.
Yeah, I love
And I
that
was able
imagery.
to take it far past being the van driver to being the founder and clinical director.
Wow. Good for you. So, how long were you in that facility for? And that drove you to this passion to taking like some pain into this purpose.
Yeah. I was actually only there for 3 weeks when I was 15, and then I ended up meeting another rehab stint at 22 where I was actually put into an inpatient psychiatric ward and diagnosed with borderline personality disorder.
Mm. Now, you've made quite a name for yourself online as a truth doctor. How did you come across that? And there's a lot of, even so far, out of the gates, your vulnerability comes through.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. It has been a journey to get to this place. Becoming the truth doctor wasn't something I ever expected. When I opened my first treatment center in 2018 with my husband, who I had been with for over a decade at that point, so we have a lot of history and it's important. He had a PTSD episode that was actually a result of my first 6 years in unrecovered BPD. I caused him a lot of trauma. And he had an episode shortly after we had our first baby. And it was televised in the city of Santa Barbara. And we were treatment center owners. And as you know, the stigma associated with mental health or substance use runs rampant in the general population. And so the response from the city and some of the healthcare community in Santa Barbara was very judgmental. And I absorbed that judgment and that stigma even as a clinician. And
Wow.
the words that I was hearing of they shouldn't own treatment centers. And did you know she's diagnosed with borderline? And how can she possibly be helping people? While I was in the throes of this traumatic experience, being a brand new mom from a really traumatizing C-section, and 10 weeks later, this happening,
Right.
I found myself asking, how can I be a good clinician or doctor if I treat myself the way that I would tell clients to not let themselves be treated by others? And I realized that my truth was that I do have these diagnoses and they don't make me incapable. They don't make me dangerous. And I've learned that they actually make me more empathetic and more ethical. So, my job as the truth doctor, I decided at the end of 2019, and I would say got lucky, even though that might not sound great because of the pandemic, with the need in society for mental health allowance, not mental health awareness. It was the allowance to have mental health issues potentially and still exist. And I've built the Truth Doctor on that premise and mission, and so far so good.
Yeah. We have a saying at the Well Club also when we work with patients and clients, just to overly simplify it, we look at truth versus lies and then the narratives that we can kind of hold on to, like what's really true about the situation and changing perspective. So I found it fascinating when we looked you up and saw that you had coined that for yourself. I must imagine too, just looking at your content, that your vulnerability and speaking truth resonates with people that are within your audience group, especially.
Yeah. When it comes to borderline personality disorder, feeling so much majorly intense emotion, it feels like there aren't words to describe how intense it is. And for people who don't have 12 years of clinical education, those words sometimes never come. And so when I'm creating my content, whether it's funny and I'm like using dark humor to accentuate some symptoms, or I'm being really serious about how detrimental and hard they can be, the best responses I've ever gotten are not public comments. They are private direct messages that say, I never thought I'd be able to explain to my partner how deeply painful my existence is and what I really need from them if they want to be in my life. And to be that voice, um, the voice I needed is it's incredible. I can't believe it.
Mhm. Let's talk about your book. Can you've written this book and it's particularly maybe what you can illuminate from some of the 12 steps.
It is. So I am an addiction expert. I've worked in treatment centers my entire career. And one thing that I realized in learning and meeting the friends and the parents and the family members of these individuals is that they could have used the 12 steps too. But the way that they're written, it is specific to people with substance use disorder. But we all deserve the opportunity to commit to change, to admit when we're wrong, to ask and for forgiveness and to make amends and to look inward and make change. And so being in the field of addiction treatment for so long, I also realized that most treatment kind of based treatment on the 12 steps. That's
Mhm.
great, but the 12 steps are also free. They're free
Mm,
outside. It's a community-based resource, and so I was always set on making sure that my treatment centers provided the evidence-based interventions that people cannot get from unprofessionals or from non-professionals. And so I kind of combined the two together in this book. And what I did was I found an evidence base for every step of the 12 steps. And I turned it from being about substance use to being about the fact that we are human beings on the planet that have unconscious processes and that our consciousness, and more so the relationship between our unconscious and our consciousness, is the biggest superpower we can ever have as humans. And really getting that is the
mhm,
solution to everything.
mm. Give us a teaser. So how would we apply maybe one of those steps, or how would you relate that to a common issue like anxiety or stress in the workplace?
That's a great question. So, one thing that I've done with one of my clients, for example, the main work that I'm doing with them, of course, there's evidence based interventions, but it's allowing them to either tap into consciousness or become aware of their unconscious. So, I have a client who experiences a lot of work stress. And in a session, he said something like, my hands are always cold when I'm at work and I don't understand why. And I said, your unconscious is showing. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, it's your somatic unconscious that is showing. Because there's three parts of it that I describe in my book: the somatic, the cognitive, and the psychoanalytic. And so I said, your body's talking to you. You know, something that most of us understand, but the language of your somatic unconscious is showing. And he said, what are you talking about? And I said, let me explain. And the roundabout solution to his understanding was, you are becoming aware of a message from your body that your blood is flowing to other areas besides your hands as a result of anxiety or stress or uncomfortability, and becoming aware of those messages, going inward and being with your unconscious instead of being afraid of it, wanting it to go away. That ultimate connection between him saying, I'm here with you, hands. I realize you're cold. And now I'm going to put you under my butt and make your hands warm because that helped my brain, and it did help his brain.
Yeah, and oftentimes just knowing and giving it a name and understanding that knowledge is half the battle, isn't it? You know,
It
we're
really
we're
is.
we're we're far more interconnected than we realize, and that's what we emphasize at the Well Club too, is the mind body spirit connection. Very similar, just like to how you outlined that, is being aware and in tune with, wait, what's my body saying, and how can I leverage that message to start to kind of diagnose what's going on here and paying closer attention to it. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think people tend to, I think a lot of people don't realize that 50% of the work of clinicians is pointing out stuff they can see themselves if they just took a moment and or had the time and opportunity to do it themselves.
Yeah, and I love books like these where you're giving them the roadmap because that's very empowering for a client to then say, "Hey, I can do this on my own if I start to recognize these things and put this in my learning history." You know, it's no longer the days of um I there was a time when I was getting golf lessons, and it felt like, all the knowledge was with the instructor, and I was at the mercy of, "Okay, let me show up again this week and see what little nugget I can draw from," but it was so hard for me to apply that on the course because I mean, maybe it wasn't the right coach, but it was so complex, and, there was no way that I was gonna be able to apply that when I was hitting a bad shot on the golf course. So breaking it down in layman's terms like how you just did, like, "Hey, your hand's cold, blood's going to other places, you should pay attention to that." I think that's brilliant. Yeah, the simplicity and that brilliance. Yeah, I love that.
Thank you.
And so, you are very involved. You have several companies within the mental health space. Talk a little bit about that.
It's overwhelming. I think the truth is
I
that this
noticed that pause. You're like, "Okay, how do
yeah.
how do I present this?"
Yeah, and I think it's important to say that, because it does sound a little ridiculous to own 5 mental health companies. It sounds excessive. They each do different things, and so I have a mental health media company, that's Truth Doctor Media, and the important thing that I do there is I work with global brands to get their mental health messaging correct, whether it's
Mm,
diagnoses, whether they're emulating a behavior or a symptom, so I feel really, prideful about that to kind of be a middle person to what society is exposed to when people with a lot of money want to use mental health as a topic and make sure that they're doing it right. So there's the media, and then there's the treatment center. It's an outpatient treatment center similar to the one that I went to, which is also I take a lot of pride in because it's hard to go from patient to CEO. But when it's done and done with care, then I think it's worth being proud of. Um, and then I have a nonprofit that is launching in the fall, and it's associated with my book, Your Unconscious is Showing. And the purpose there is to go into schools, middle schools, and high schools, and provide this education on, of course, an even more simplified level to human beings when they could use it at the most opportune time. And then I have 2 other companies that are mental health based as well, but those 3 are the primary ones that I'm focusing on growing and making the biggest impact possible.
yeah, well, it seems like they're all converging as part of a bigger ecosystem that feeds off each other, so, to fulfill the purpose and the goal that you have in mind. Can we I think it would benefit our listeners to hear what to look for in, a facility. What are what are the evidence-based type things that they should be asking for or looking for as they're helping their loved ones get into these facilities? Can you speak to that a bit?
Yes. And I really appreciate that question because we have to take things slow, especially in immediate and urgent situations, which can be really difficult to do. When a website looks good and the person on the phone sounds nice, it can be easy to allow that to provide you so much relief, you just move forward. And that's a beautiful process if it works out. And I would hope that there would be some room to ask questions. And some of those questions would be, who owns the facility? To me, that is vital depending upon the size of it. And you want to look for someone that either has a really important story that makes it seem like they're going to provide ethical care, or they're really experienced and they're an expert with certifications and specializations. The next thing I think is to really look at the website and see if you can see yourself or your loved one in it. Oftentimes, it's really generic information and it doesn't actually explain what is going to happen on a day to day basis for you or your loved one. And so, really getting a clear idea and asking. So, ask who owns it, who's going to be around me or my loved one, and then um, asking what a day really looks like. And another thing I think is really important is the size of the facility matters. And so you want to ask, am I going to get lost in the shuffle? How many clients does my therapist have? How many times am I going to meet with my therapist?
Mm.
Because meeting with a therapist for 1 hour a week when you're in one of the highest levels of care is not enough individual care for you to complete that program successfully. You might complete, but the success that you're looking for usually needs more individualized care.
Mm. Yeah, it's really good. Have you found that there's a difference and there's some key ingredients that needs to be had in these facilities that promotes better prognosis, or is it just too complex to even list out for people to look for?
Well, as a social worker before a psychologist, I think it's very important
Mhm.
that health related social needs are a priority. I have seen so many times people go into a 28-day, 30-day program, and while they have gotten massages and they've had 4 hours of one on one therapy, they can't pay their bills and they don't actually have supports. And, their car is breaking down. And so they return to these very basic things that all humans need to take care of, but those are the things that are going to break them down again. And so I think it's important that we are treating the environment and the individual, even if the individual is removed from the environment for a certain period of time.
Mhm. I see. Where do you see the future headed for this field?
Well, something that I say in the beginning of my book um, is that we have treated parts of the unconscious separately for far too long.
Mm.
You go to primary care doctors for your somatic unconscious. You go to therapists for your psychoanalytic unconscious. And maybe you go to an OT specialist or a physical therapist to change the way your body automatically moves. Um, and I think we need more integration. I go to a gym here locally in Orange County that has combined gyms, hair salons, physical therapy, massage therapy, a restaurant, and so on. And just last week, I was thinking, this is the future. We need pods where all of our wellness needs are taken care of at once. And we can start to have an ongoing team like we do for a PCP, for example, but it's in all areas and they are comprehensively working together. That's the dream. I wonder if it is yours too.
It is. You're speaking my language and I've got goosebumps, you know? I've for so long, um well, as a licensed ed psych, when I was working in the school settings, we were always part of a multidisciplinary team: speech, OT, teachers, physicians. And so I think I had the blessing of being around that for so long that that was always intuitive to me, that we as complex human beings shouldn't be banking all of our eggs in one basket in isolation with one PCP or one OT and taking all of that when there's the benefit of a dimensional approach, and why it's no wonder I've discovered the 9 dimensions within wellness, right? Because we're all interconnected within mind, body, spirit, and looking to bring that to the forefront in a way where, like this experience that you just encountered with these different disciplines coming together, it's beautiful when it works, because you can reap the benefits as someone receiving that, to be receiving something fully holistic, which is what we need, and then it compounds as well. There's like a ripple effect when you work on one area intentionally, because there's multi faceted regions that you're targeting, and you're doing that with an with clear intention, there's widespread effects. So we are very excited about the possibility of that as well, in the future.
Yeah, that's really amazing. And I think what it also does is it allows the patient or the client to understand the connectedness too, it's not just one provider saying all these things are connected. It's like 10 providers saying we are connected because you are connected. And not only does that give them education, but it gives them safety and security and a place to go where people, not a person, are there for them.
Yeah, I love that. So just in closing, is there anything that I didn't ask yet that you want to share today?
What I would like to say with the state of the world to anyone listening is that even when things feel very out of control, there are still things that you can control. And those things are your body, your brain, your mind, and your actions. And I encourage each of you to remember that. Write it down, do something because you deserve to be in control, and to remind yourself of that.
Thank you. That's lovely put. Well, I had a great time, Courtney. Appreciate you being on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was an honor. And really, I would love to talk to you more. I want to learn more about the 9 dimensions you mentioned. And I really would love to pick your brain about the future with this cohort type comprehensive care.
Absolutely. Let's do that.
This has been the Well Club. Remember that wellness is not a destination, but a continuous path of growth and self-discovery. To learn more about Dr. Rob Duke, go to drduke.com. Until next time, stay curious, stay inspired, and always remember to nurture your well-being. The Well Club is a production of Forbes Books.